Marvelous!
Part 2 of the wiki skim. You know anything about Nebula?
No.
Alright, Nebula is actually pretty similar to her, like, comic book appearance. Or comic book personality. Don't remember how much of their, like, sisterly feud played into her character, though. Celestials. One of them actually made an appearance in the Power Stone demonstration in Guardians 1.
Yeah.
What do you know about them?
I know Celestials are can come from planets after being destroyed, a new one can be born. I know that there's a bunch of Celestials, like one of the first beings, and they're a big, huge threat, and that's about not all I know.
Typically always seen wearing some sort of armor. They do have a habit of destroying planets in order to birth new ones, and their motives are very wild.
All of them?
Not all of them, I guess. Oh, also, the head of a Celestial is Nowhere. I don't know if you picked that up.
Oh, I've heard about that, yeah.
Okay. Celestials do some very interesting things in the comics. So, you know about, like, the multiverse and stuff, and how, like, there's so many different of them. Alright. I don't know if this happens in other multiverses, but in this one, I don't know if it happens in the Marvel MCU either, but in the comics, Earth 616 is the one that most people typically refer to when they refer to a character. The reason there's so many, like, superhumans and mutants and deviants and things like that is because a dying Celestial fell onto Earth, and then, like, I forget exactly what it is, but, like, you know, he dies on Earth, or he or she dies on Earth, and it's like his essence that eventually gets embedded into basically everything living thing in there.
Wow.
Yes. It's what makes Earth so special. Also, various Celestials have tried to do experiments and things like that on various planets, including Earth. Earth typically fails those experiments, and they come after Earth, but superhumans, Avengers, X-Men, you need a Fantastic Four. You need to deal with those before you can touch Earth.
You need to deal with all the biggest threats,
Mm.
and then you have to hope humanity just knock itself out without them.
Alright, we'll probably talk a lot more about Celestials in another movie. But speaking of Celestials, here's the biggest one I did the wiki skim for. What do you know about Ego?
We haven't gotten over Guardians Galaxy 2, but I know Ego.
Or about to?
I don't know much about Ego.
You don't. Okay. Ego is by far the most fascinating of these wiki skims. Ego, not a Celestial.
What?
Or, okay, he is here, not in the comics.
Oh.
Ego first appeared in Thor. Forget which issue. He is Ego the Living Planet. There was a scientist on that planet, and I forget his exact name. I believe one of the Beyonders came to do experiments on the planet, and as a result, the entire planet just kind of died.
Oh, what?
But this scientist kind of saved himself, kinda? I forget the exact process, but he essentially becomes the planet and everything in it. So all the people that died, he becomes them. He becomes the planet itself, the vegetation, the life, everything. He becomes the planet.
Okay.
Yes, he's not a Celestial. And in fact, he has nothing to do with Guardians of the Galaxy either. Nothing to do with Peter either. It is through that process, however, that they also make another planet, his brother. I forget his name. And I think there's a moon too. But what's more important, that this planet does exist, and he is somewhat of a threat, actually. Mostly to Thor. His plans are mostly the same. His goal is to conquer the universe, essentially, by embedding himself into every other planet, to make them part of him, on some Buddha shit. Oh man, I might have to save that. I was going to talk about a time that he fought Galactus, the Planet Eater, but I don't know if Galactus is going to show up at the MCU yet.
No, I don't know either. People were theorizing he was going to show up as the next big threat.
They are bringing in the Fantastic Four, so I wouldn't be surprised if they would. You should know that this guy is a big deal. He is not a Celestial, nothing to do with Peter. But other than that, his plans are not how he does it, but his plans are mostly the same. He's a fascinating character, though. I highly recommend you look him up.
Okay.
After this. Do you know anything about Mantis?
Nope. Most of the Guardian Galaxies people I have not heard much about.
Damn, alright. Mantis is also fascinating. Not as fascinating as Ego. But, I have to save that for after your notes.
Shall I start? Should I wait, or...
No, but there is one more thing I want to, do you know anything about Eternity?
Eternity?
Yes, Eternity. They make a reference to him in this movie.
I've heard of Eternity. He's like a super powerful character. One of the most powerful. But I don't know much more about him than that.
He has a sister named Infinity.
I knew that.
Eternity is the manifestation of space, I believe. Or no, time. Manifestation of time. Infinity is the manifestation of space. Which is I find it kind of weird that they reference him in this movie, considering who we're dealing with.
Ego.
Yeah. I'll talk more about that when I get to that reference, though. Your notes are typically more of a play-by-play of the movie. Take it away.
I was very interested in how the movie started. We're getting straight into who the person we're going to introduce. We see Peter's mother and Ego, or I should not. Well, yeah, whatever.
It's Ego.
Yeah, Ego. Talking about, she's telling him this is what I planted, Severe, and then we go to the present, to the Guardian Galaxy, talking about how Rocket's winking his eye, about getting a music set up, how all of them are being prepared for this creature coming there, and how they're going to do this job. Then the monster appears, and Groot sets up the music, finishes the music thing, and the music plays in the background, and you just see the fight in the background the whole time, and the intro, which I thought very interesting. And then when the movie probably starts, they show. So they finish the fight, and Drax is reckless and jumps into the beast, trying to stab him from the inside, which is very stupid, apparently. The mission statement was to try to get Nebula, which I was really surprised about, first time watching. And also the only reason they went into trouble is because Rocket stole from them. and I like how the ships are basically fake. Or
not fake, but remote controlled.
Remote controlled, computers.
Which, Nova Corps needs to get on that.
Yeah, Nova Corps.
That's the most powerful shit I've seen in the world.
Yeah, that's broken. That's amazing. You don't have to fight anymore. I call them video game ships because that's basically what they are.
Yeah, about how they manifest. Yeah,
they're arguing about Rocket and Peter Quill, whose ship it is, how to work it, causes the ship to get damaged, showing a possible conflict in the movie. I like how they it's to solve problems. I like how the shows they're not perfect, and they would have almost certainly died if Ego on his ship didn't arrive to destroy everything. And then they introduced Mantis as a positive thing at first. Drax's relationship with Mantis, well, not relationship, but Drax is very interesting with Mantis. It's very, very. He's very rude. In some sec.
He's always been rude.
Yeah, he's very rude, but he's never. But that's basically he never changes. It's very interesting how they got along. I like how they eventually get together, and they all go to Peter with Gamora, and they all decide to go to Ego's planet, but they leave Rocket and Groot behind,
and
Nebula, which I was you can tell Rocket's not taking it well. Internally, but outernally he's not showing anything. If you know subtle cues, which I do not, so I was surprised I caught that.
Alright.
The demonstrated Mantis' ability on the ship when that happens. Peter's deep and darkest secret to revealed out loud. Mantis checks Drax's emotions, and I like how if you do that to me, I will break your hand. Basically, Gamora is
the only thing you'll be feeling is a broken hand.
Yeah. I like how then in the meanwhile, Rocket is going through getting attacked by all the Ravengers from last movie. Rocket was like about to die, but Yondu actually kind of doesn't try to steal from him, and like he gets betrayed by basically everyone, including his friend, like the
Kragan.
Yeah, and like all of them get launched out of and then they all get launched out, and then they learn the name is Taserface.
What do you think of the name Taserface?
Is it an actual comic character?
I did not look up this guy. He's not that important.
I'm like, I was like that.
Based on the way they tell the joke, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a reference to the comics.
Meanwhile, if Peter and friends are talking about his mother, and like all that stuff is happening, showing him the powers and stuff, how to use it, and how he's a Celestial and stuff, which you explained is not in the comics.
It is not.
I love the scene when like Rocket and Yondu are trying to get Groot to get the arrow and the prototype fin, and like he gets an eye, a whole bunch of other stuff, and the severed finger. I like how Groot never gets the thing they need.
He's a little baby.
I like that. I like how Rocket do you have any of the music that Quill used to have?
Yes, I'll put a pin in that because I want to talk about that as well.
And he just uses the arrow to kill everyone on the ship, and then blow up the ship. And like Taserface actually gets the last word on something,
but he gets laughed at.
Yeah. Is the jumps in the comics like this when Rocket does the 700 jumps? Is that like jumping ability in the comics?
I did not read that much about the space travel in comics, so
I want to talk about how Gamora and Peter talk about like Peter saying, "I finally found my family." Like I thought you already did. Gosh, that was messed up. That was uncomfortable.
I've got quite a bit to say about that as well.
We'll go on there. And then immediately, as soon as when Gamora's walking the field, Nebula's just like, "Hello,
yes,
die! I will kill you," and just throws everything she has at her. Somehow Gamora survives and actually manages to take out the ship and saves Nebula. Gamora does, and then they continue fighting because Nebula has no chill. Eventually, Nebula calms down, talks to Gamora, kind of.
Yeah.
Then Peter learns he can make anything, basically. Eventually, 5 years, he's like, "I'm going to make some weird shit." Nebula and Gamora learn the truth. Mantis tries to tell Drax, and everything else happens. And then Peter is trying to be used as a power source to help Ego take over the unit, basically turn him into everything. Mm-hmm. Until Ego tells Peter Quill that she put a tumor in his mother's head. He immediately snaps out whatever trance he puts and starts shooting bullets, as you do. They had to fight Ego. Ego starts expanding, but Quill stops him and fighting one-on-one. Quill fights Ego by himself at the end of the movie as the planet's being destroyed. As if you leave this way, you will become as everyone else. And what's wrong with that? Yondu saves Peter and dies. You get a Ravager funeral, and Rocket has a moment. It was a very brief summary.
As far as what I remember my initial thoughts were for Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I remember not liking it as much. Or, not liking it as much as Marvel movies. Definitely not as much as Guardians 1. I've found, looking back on it now, I don't feel the same way. But I remember being kind of put off by Drax's character. It felt like he had a complete character shift. Looking back at it more closely, not really. He has become a bit flanderized, though. Drax has now become the best and worst character. He's an idiot character without actually being an idiot. My favorite line in this one, "You just need to find someone pathetic. Like you." Just absolute no social cues. It's amazing. It's amazing and terrible for something I'll get into later.
Yeah.
We're putting all kinds of pins in this discussion. I'm curious how much of Ego's story was made up. Because there's certain things, looking back at the story he tells Peter of his origins and why he does things he does. There are certain holes that I found and wasn't sure about. Do they refer to all life as human? Because he decided upon a form based on what he thought other life would look like. One, immediately human. Two, it's like a full man with a mullet too. And then two, he mentions that he decided to venture out and figure out what it means to be human, which is weird because it's pretty well established that most of the creatures in space are not human. That may be something they explained in the movie. I just found it kind of weird. I imagine some of the story is made up for
dramatic effect.
Like dramatic effect and to lie to Peter.
Yeah.
But I'm curious how much of it is. Because there's definitely some parts that are true. I think this movie really, really puts a spotlight on the character, how well these characters are characterized. There's a lot of moments and things that need highlighting. I would have first put... Actually, get to that in a second. Nebula. By far the biggest glow up. Her... You can actually sympathize with her in this movie. Well, that's in the first one, it's kind of shown how much her sister matters to her. But in this one, you not only see how much it matters, but you figure out why she's so upset. After she essentially becomes the Ravager leader and then leaves.
Yeah.
Kraglin asks her, "What are you going to do with your portion of the money?"
I'm going to murder him. Until this is a whole dramatic scene about how he's going to murder everything and everyone show revenge.
Yeah, I was thinking a pretty necklace or something, something to make the other girls go ooh. Kraglin is a great character. I love Kraglin.
Yeah, we need to see him more in Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
We are actually, according to the trailers.
All right.
Also, he gets the fin, so
yeah,
it'd be kind of a miss if he didn't. Okay, Rocket getting into Peter's music. It did kind of start in Guardians 1, but I love how much of an emphasis is put on that now, where he's actively seeking out the same music that Peter listens to. And once again, the music is canon. The opening scene, they're fighting this big monster. They were literally listening to the same music that we are during that scene. Also, that scene is beautiful for a few reasons.
Yeah. Murder everywhere.
And, yeah. Or drop that thought, because I don't exactly have a way to expand it. I love that Peter insists on using references that only he should get. That scene where Gamora and Peter are arguing about Gamora suspects that something is up, things like that. And he keeps relating it to the show Cheers. And then, Gamora rightly gets upset, I don't even know what Cheers is. This isn't the sitcom where and again, music. Music is really important in this movie, actually. Actually, yeah, it's really important in this movie. Ego relates to Peter using... I don't know the song name, but
The song his mother liked the most.
Yes. But my woman is the sea. Things like that. We gotta return to the sea. I've heard something like this, actually, a different song. But that, it's my profession over my family.
How I feel about that is my family over the sea, and no,
or the sea over your family,
or the sea over your family,
or profession, I guess, over family.
Yeah, I don't think that's right, honestly, but that's personal opinion.
It's interesting. The world is shifting more towards that way.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've been keeping up with the manosphere and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but definitely it started with money over hoes. And then it eventually became money over focus on getting your money instead of focusing on trying to build stable relationships.
Yeah.
Alright. Make sure we don't get too off topic. That scene where Ego reveals that he put the tumor in Peter's mom's brain, very important for a lot of reasons. I'm not going to get into it this time. But the fact that it's unfortunate that I had to put a tumor in her head. And then you see, like, the zoom out, like, what? Yeah, and then he's talking, and then he just starts blasting.
I know that sounds bad. Yeah.
And we rightfully cheered. But that scene is you should keep it's gonna be a while, but I am eventually going to ask you to remember that scene for something that happens very much later in these movies. You need to keep that scene in mind and why that scene is so awesome. Oh, I want to go back a bit. I want to dissect the scene. That crash landing scene was beautiful for a lot of reasons. So this once again goes back to character. Did you notice how when Groot is flying around, Peter grabs Groot out the air and he tosses him back? He doesn't say heads up or anything. He just tosses him back. Because he knows Drax will catch it. Drax puts Groot into Gamora's hands because he knows she will watch him. There's a lot of, like, trust. They can
trust each other.
Yeah, they visibly show that these characters do trust each other. They just have their issues.
Yeah.
Also in that scene is, like, the manifestation of ego, ironically. Both of them could have landed that ship. And they actually did, even though they're fighting, they actually do a pretty good job avoiding what should be completely random asteroids spawning in and out of nowhere. So, like, they're really good at this. But their egos getting in the way. Before I go further in these notes, I had a question that I asked you this day, actually. Do you remember it?
End credit scenes.
Mm-hmm. After credit etiquette. So, to give you some context, these two movies somehow have more after credit scenes than some of the trilogies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This movie, or Guardians of the Galaxy 2 in particular, has 3 post-credit scenes. Also, Guardians 1 has... Actually, no. Both of these movies have post-credit scenes that are actually plot relevant. How do you feel about post-credit scenes in general?
I feel like they, as long as they're, like, have something kind of reward for people to, like, watch them and learn, I feel like they're good. But actually, I feel like it should be, like, hinting to the next movie or, like, hinting to, like, what's going on next. Not just... not plot relevant.
Because, like, these scenes are actually rather important to the plot for some reason. There's a very big Adam Warlock hint. Yeah. What was it in Guardians 1? I think it was the Reality Stone.
Yeah. No, that was only seen at the very end of the Infinity Stones saga.
What was it in Guardians 1? I should have wrote it down. For as important as it is, I probably should have wrote it down.
Yeah.
So the other context to this, these are movies that are shown in theaters. So before, like way back in the day, because of how limited movies were, they actually showed the credits at the beginning of the movie. So you'd sit down for the movie, you'd see, like, the title card, little ditty would play as the black and white came on and everything. And then it'd show you the credits. And then, at some point, people decided, alright, well, these credits are getting a little bit long. We're going to put them at the end of the movie. And audiences were very receptive to that. But also, people eventually picked up that, well, once the credit starts, there's no more movie, really. I can just get up and leave. But now, because of how these Marvel movies work, you kind of have to sit there while credits play until the post-credit scene happens, and then you have to hope that there's not another post-credit scene that is, like, important or anything. But also, I find it kind of weird that when they typically do these post-credit scenes, they only do it, like, halfway through the credits, to where you have to sit through some people's names, but not the majority of people's names. Which makes me question kind of the motivations behind these.
I don't know.
What are your thoughts, then?
I want to know what came up with this idea of post-credit scenes. To see what was up with that. Because I'm very curious.
There's, like, don't get me wrong, some of these post-credit scenes are great. There is one in particular I'm thinking of, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, that does it perfectly.
Oh, I know. I like that one.
Yes. Okay, so you've seen it before.
Yep.
Yeah, the show's over. It's perfect. I remember being in the theater when that happened, and everyone just laughed. Because, like, we got. It's exactly what a post-credit scene should be. It resolves something that really isn't important in the movie, but also it's just like this little tease for, like, you know, those who stuck around. Show's over. That's it. What did you want? But, like, here in Guardians of the Galaxy, they want to make sure that you see
everything.
Yeah, alright. Kraglin has the arrow now, and he's using it. Adam Warlock is coming. It's like a tease to another, I think it's another Guardians team, actually.
Yeah.
And
the Ravagers, basically.
Well, it's like something like comic book relevant.
Yeah.
Forgot what it was. Oh well. And then, of course, there's Guardians 1. Do you think this is something that should continue? Do you think it's necessary?
I don't think it's necessary.
Right.
But I don't think they're going to stop.
Alright. I mean, they have a formula now. It's kind of hard to stop. Alright. Continuing with my notes. It's not much left. So this movie has some of the coolest shots in Marvel.
Yeah.
The Death of Ronan is beautiful as well, both in terms of dialogue and what is actually visually happening on the screen. Although it is basically CGI land. You said it yourself, bitch. With the Guardians of the Galaxy. And then he just opens his hand, and Ronan fades away. Ooh, that's foreshadowing. There is basically every time they cut to, I think, widescreen.
Yeah.
You know, where it's not the black bars. It looks great. And I kind of wish more of the movie was like that. But here's something I do not like about this. Or this movie puts a highlight on something that I do not like about Marvel movies in general. Or movies in general. But especially the Marvel movies, because they're comic book based. I have an application on this computer called Blender. It's a 3D modeling software. I can make, art in 3D in this software. When I choose to render an image, I have some options for how I do so in color.
Yeah.
There is the standard color, and then there's also the filmic color.
Yeah.
By default, it's in filmic. But if I were to pull it up now, and I click that button and change it to standard, you notice that everything immediately becomes much more colorful, much more saturated, much more like real life.
Yeah.
But in much more color in general. It's very disappointing in this movie to see how much they attempted to put color everywhere, but then decided to go with the standard filmic wash. Both in terms of a visual color set, as well as the designs of the characters. Flashback. A game called Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite comes out. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite is not a very good looking game. However, there's a few things in there that genuinely caught me off guard as far as how characters are made. I remember something else I remember about watching Guardians for the first time is how much I didn't like the look of Gamora. Couldn't put my finger on it, but I did not like the look of Gamora. I still don't like her now, but now I know why. So Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite comes out. Gamora is in that game. She looks very different. 1, she's much more colorful. But 2, much more saturated even. 2, she has these yellow circles around her eyes. Very bright yellow circles around her eyes.
You don't have to show me.
Alright.
You can show me after.
Alright. And I noticed looking back, they actually kind of tried to do that, but they only went for a very, very muted, almost brown, yellow eyeshadow or whatever, just on her eyelids and slightly around her eyes. Whereas in comics, it's very big and obvious. Like Spider-Man levels of big yellow eyes.
So you don't like that much?
I don't like how much... Because I have a theory on why they do this. I paid money for this actor's face. I want to make sure that I rub it in everybody's face. How, like, this actor that I bought. We need to make sure... Because if you notice in, like, Iron Man, they do a lot of cutting to the inside of Iron Man's suit so you could see Robert Downey Jr.'s face. You gotta see it. We paid money for this face. You are going to see it. Halo. Not even Marvel, but Halo. The Halo TV series. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah, I heard.
Okay.
It's bad.
I think it's like a 5-minute, or not 5-minute, scene to scene to scene. Take off the helmet. Look at his face. Cut to him driving through, or putting the helmet back on, driving through the desert, getting out the car, take off the helmet. Because you need to see his face. This is Master Chief. It's not, it's not supposed, you're not really supposed to see his face anyway. But they paid good money for this actor, you need to see his face. And as a result of that, Gamora cannot have color. There are certain character designs that they do a lot to try and get the comic book feel to it, but you need to know that this actor, we paid for them to be in this movie, you must see their face. Not even a little bit of color can distract from that. Also, even when they do, for like environments and stuff, when they do try to put like a whole bunch of color on the screen, they still put the filmic wash. And I hate it. Maybe it's because I'm an artist. I see you like groaning and shaking your head and...
No, I'm not groaning and shaking your head because I didn't notice that before, and now
Right.
it's like, now I'm like, my brain's like, oh god, they did do that.
You look like you're going through the worst migraine in history.
Yeah, because I'm like, what? Oh god, how did I not notice this before?
Well, I mean, you're not also like super into art like I am, so I
No.
wouldn't expect most people to notice this.
I didn't notice it, and I'm like, oh.
Although I do appreciate like the wide shot scenes of where they do try to put color on the screen. They try. This is more colorful than most of the other Marvel movies, but it's still disappointing because they could have done so much better. Because like these locations are so cool. Nowhere is such a cool place. I don't know if you've seen the Guardians of the Galaxy game. It's really cool. We got to talk about it at some point. Yeah. But you see what it can look like when you aren't restricted by filmic wash. It looks amazing. Like I want to go there. It looks great. I'm ranting too much about color. I care about this. Let me try and wrap this up before we spend like 8 hours on these 2 movies. Another scene you need to keep in mind for something we will get to later, but sooner than the Peter shooting his dad scene. This scene has the worst instance of... I'm not even going to say the name, because you'll immediately understand what I'm getting at, and I don't want to go on to that discussion now. But keep in mind the scene where Yondu kills an entire army, basically, with an arrow. Just keep it in mind. These movies are genuinely funny, and they don't feel like they're trying to be. These are... I mean, what are your thoughts on the movies?
I think they're good movies, and they're like some of the best movies I've seen in a while. Mm-hmm. And I'm really excited for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. But I'm like, I understand that it's not for everyone.
Okay, I can see that. I remember reading that the James Gunn wanted this to be more of like whereas something like Black Panther is like a political drama, and something like, I forget exactly what it was, but more of like a dark buddy cop movie. This is supposed to be more of like a family comedy movie, and it shines in that regard. I also cannot wait for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. But if you will give me just a moment to talk about... There is another Guardians movie that is out. And it's not a movie. It's like 30 minutes, I think. The Christmas special.
I have not watched that.
You have not seen it. Alright. You don't need to.
What?
It's... Will you allow me to talk about it for just a moment?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Because it's an idiot plot. Do you know what those are?
No.
Okay. An idiot plot only works if you assume that every single person in that, like, or most of the people that drive the narrative are idiots. It centers on Drax and Mantis. And there's like this backstory of like, Yondu ruined Christmas for Peter because he like hates handouts and whatnot. He doesn't, but whatever. So Drax and Mantis hatch a plan to kidnap Kevin Bacon because he's talked about him quite a bit in these two movies actually about how he was such a great hero. So their plan is to kidnap Kevin Bacon and give him to Peter as a Christmas present.
What?
Which is, as Peter rightfully points out, human trafficking. And also wrong. It's an idiot plot. A big revelation in that special, though. Spoilers if you haven't seen it. So, in this continuity, Mantis is Peter's sister. Which is wild. I thought they were setting up for them to be like after he gets over Gamora, them to be together. That I guess that's not happening anymore. Unless they're gonna Star Wars this. But,
oh god.
They could do that. But Mantis is Peter's sister, I guess. Which is interesting. They're definitely not in the comics, not related at all.
In this continuity?
In this like MCU universe. They are brother and sister.
How?
So Ego is her dad. You know, he went to a whole bunch of planets and fucked everybody. Basically. He had a ton of babies. And most of them died. But, so this is one of them. By far the most powerful baby he had, actually. When you think about it. Because she can literally... So, like, in the comics, she has the ability to, like, influence people's minds. Kind of like she does with sleep in this movies. But it's even more powerful. Like, literally the power of suggestion. In fact, actually... How they became the Guardians of the Galaxy in the first place is because Peter and Mantis got together, not like romantically, but they got together as like a group, and she used her powers to kind of persuade the rest of the group to become the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh my god!
Yeah, no, it's absolutely wild.
Wow.
It's messed up.
This. Jeez.
Yeah, it's wild.
I knew they were messed up and their backstory was messed up, but god.
But yeah, it's an idiot plot. There's a really catchy song in there. But there's nothing really important other than the fact that Mantis is Peter's sister. I have a feeling they're going to make reference to that in Guardians 3. So I guess it is important that you know that. But other than that, I mean, it's not a bad watch, but you'll immediately recognize what I mean by when I say idiot plot.
Okay.
It almost feels like they're out of character, but then you look back to the movies and go, no, that's actually completely, or mostly in character with who these people are established to be, at least.
Do they go to Earth?
They do go to Earth. They go to Earth. And, like, that's fun and all. Mantis gets drunk. Mantis and Drax get drunk. But, oh well.
Alright. Well, I got everyone watched.